Hey, welcome back to ATO Audio. Today on the channel, we're going to be doing an update on our Sansui QRX-5500A. And if you remember from my last video, we were missing some parts and we had to rebuild the amp board. And so I'm going to put a link to that video where I explain what I did to troubleshoot this unit up here. So that way, if you haven't seen that video, go ahead and watch that video because it won't make sense watching this one at first. All right, so if you did watch that video, you'll know that after we got done troubleshooting the amp board and also the protection board, we still weren't getting any sound out of the receiver. And then after tracking it down using the schematic and also using another unit, we realized that we were missing a jumper that plugged into where the back was, the remote control. And I'll put a picture of that on the screen as well, what that looked like. Because when I got the unit, there was nothing plugged in there, and I wasn't familiar with a remote control that actually plugged in these quadraphonic receivers. And so, you know, like I said before, you don't know what you don't know. And because of that, I wasn't able to track down the problem as quickly as I would have liked. I'm sure I would have tracked down that problem eventually, but basically what I did was I was able to find another unit and then use that to kind of troubleshoot this unit. And because of that, I was able to find out that there was a jumper plug missing. And that plug basically acts as a connector between the preamp and the amplifier. And a lot of the other receivers, they look like those metal hooks, you know, that just kind of, and it says preamp in, preamp out. But if you look through the service manual and the owner's manual, I found no reference to this plug being necessary in order for the receiver to work. And so I really think that they probably should have done that when they made this receiver, because without it, if you didn't know that it didn't come with it, you would just think you had a broken receiver, and it really made it a hard time to troubleshoot this receiver. But after I got that figured out, then I kind of went into, well, what do I do? And so I had a couple options. One, I could hope to find one on eBay and see if anybody was parting one out that had one of those plugs. And so I did that route and I couldn't find anything. My next avenue was I could have just spliced the wires together basically. And so that means I would have cut the wires going out of the preamp and then spliced those wires directly into the wires going back into the amp board. And I really didn't want to do that because I really like to try to keep the receivers as original as possible. And I think that's just the way to do it. And so, because if someone has to work on this after me, that'll be one less thing that they have to figure out. And, you know, honestly, they won't know that I did it, you know. So I didn't want to do that and someone have basically give someone the same problem that I just had, as far as not understanding or not realizing that someone had done an alteration to that work. So what I settled on was trying to replicate that plug or that jumper that plugged into that remote control back outlet. And so I'm really happy to be able to do this, but I was able to design on my 3D printer, and I know you guys won't be able to see from here, but I'll show you in closer in a few minutes. I was able to design that 3D part, and this thing pretty much looks identical or pretty darn close to that plug originally. And so I was able to 3D print this into two parts, and the first part, basically I was able to get some copper, stiff copper wire, and use that as the jumper pins in between the preamp and the amplifier itself. And so I had to do this several times to make sure I had the sizing, the spacing for the wires and the plugs correct. But after a few hours, I was able to get this part completed and made, and this thing works pretty beautifully. And so I don't think there's going to be obviously a high demand for this part, but I mean, I've got it now, and it'd be a lot easier to reproduce if I ever come across one that needs it again. But this way I can keep the receiver original, not make any altercations, and you know, now it works. And so I'm going to go ahead and bring you guys in closer into my office, and I'm going to show you kind of the 3D CAD design that I put on this, and then we'll come back out here to my shop, we'll plug it in, and you guys will get to see that it works, okay? So let's go on into my office.
All right, guys, here we are in the office, and this is the 3D models that I made in my CAD software of that, basically that jumper pin between the preamp and the amp. And so, as you can see, I made this into two parts. And so kind of here on the right-hand side is the cap. And that basically just slides over the business end, right? And so what I did is I took some stiff copper and it comes through the holes here on the bottom, goes in, and then is bent at 90 degrees and bent at another 90 degrees and comes back down. And that's what completes the circuit. And so there's 9 pins here, but this 9th one here really doesn't connect anything. So you have jumper pins, you have 4 pairs of jumper pins that connect the preamp to the amplifier. Now, once I did that, I basically just melted the plastic around these, just hold it in place. And then I glued this cap on. And so that turned out really, really well. And it works perfectly. So it turned out good, and it keeps the receiver original. So like I said, it took me probably a couple of hours of designing this in the software, and then, you know, I'd have to print one, modify the whole pattern a little bit just to make sure that it plugged correctly into the receiver itself. But after doing that, you know, I was able to get a very good model. And so this is the original one that came with the receiver, the second receiver. And then this is what I made here. And so almost spot on, very similar in height. And so this turned out really, really well. And so it worked really well. And so it just works just exactly like the other one. And so it just plugs in and it connects the receivers. And so I'm pretty happy with how that worked out. But let's go back out to the shop and let's test this out in real life, and you guys can see it there.
All right, guys, so you'll see here on the receiver, this is where that remote control plugs into. And so it's pretty neat. The remote control, and like I said on the previous video, basically plugged in here and came with, you know, 20, 30 feet of cable, and you could sit on a couch and control the receiver. So really before the what we think of the modern remote that has the IR in it, this was a way to sit on your couch and still control your receiver. The problem is that something had to be plugged in here for the receiver to be connected to the preamp to the amplifier. So without that remote or without this plug, it wouldn't work. And so I'll try to autofocus here. But this is what the plug looks like. And so as you can see my copper and my 3D printed design that we just went over in my office just a second ago. But all we're going to do, guys, is just like the original, we're just going to go in here and plug it in. And so it actually has a way it lines up. And so it plugs in just like the original, and that's it. That's all we have to do. And so this will stay with the receiver, and now we can turn this receiver on. You guys can see that it's working with the plug in place. And so I think this is an improvement on the original design. I need to put something back here that will hold this in. They used to have a strap here, but that strap was broken, and so maybe I'll figure out what I can do, zip tie it or something, to where this, if this comes out, which I don't know why it would, will still be connected to the receiver so it doesn't get lost in the future. So let me bring you guys back out. We'll turn this thing on and we'll see if we get some sweet, sweet music. All right, guys, so you guys got to see a close-up of the finished product, the plug that we made. And so as you can see, that thing looks pretty darn close to the original. And so it's going to keep this receiver in original condition. And let's go ahead and see if it works. So I'm going to go ahead and play my favorite tune. And so as you can see, it's playing music good. And so this receiver still has a lot of work to be done to it. And so really, it's going to have a complete overhaul. And so this is something I'll probably put on the back burner for a little bit because I've got some other work ahead of it. But I just wanted to give you guys that update and show you that we were able to successfully make that plug and keep the stereo original. And so probably what I'll wind up doing with this unit is I'm going to list it for sale at some point. That's after I do a restore on it. And so at a bare minimum, I've already redone the amp board, and so I'll just take a quick glance over that. I can't remember if I did the capacitors on that board or not, but if I didn't, I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I've changed all the transistors and capacitors on that board. And then I'll move on to the protection/power supply board, and I'll change all the transistors and electrolytic capacitors on that board. From there, I may look at the EQ board or phono board and some of the tone controls, clean all those switches, and then update all the lighting as well to LEDs, and make sure we put a new LED here so we get some good looking indicators as well. So once I've done all that, I'll probably take a quick look at the case, maybe do a light sand and re-lacquer that case, and then I'll be listing this for sale on my website. So when I get ready to do that, I'm not sure if I'll make a video on the restore process or not, but if there's anything that sticks out to me that I think would be really good for you guys to know, or something that I find interesting, I'll go ahead and make a video for that and I'll put it on the channel. So make sure you subscribe and turn on your notifications. So if that's something you want to be notified on, you will. If there's something specific that you'd want me to do or would like to see, just make sure you leave a note in the comments below. And so and I'll try to answer that and do the best I can. So I think that's going to be all there is for this unit. So I'm pretty excited that I was able to fix that plug issue. And now that I've got it designed, it'll be pretty easy to replicate if anybody ever needs one of those plugs. Not a part that I see there being a large need for, but at least I know I can make one if I need it, if I come across another unit that needs one of those plugs. So I was kind of disappointed, you know, that it was never mentioned in the service manual or the owner's manual about that plug. And so I think that's really a fall through of what Sansui could have done to help us technicians out. So again, if you have any questions or comments, make sure to leave them in the comment field. But as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next video.